And welcome to another episode of Primility Primer, our morning reminder of the power of balancing pride and humility as we go about our daily lives. This is episode 50. We're halfway to 100. I am your host, Jared Morris. I hope everybody had a great weekend and is ready for another week of Primility Primer episodes. For today's episode, I want to work from an article actually that hang on. There we go. Sorry, I had feedback in my ear. Okay. So for this episode, I want to work from an article that a Primility Primer listener sent to me. It's a really, really good article. It's kind of an example of Primility out there in the wild. But I want to use it anyway. It's about leadership. It's from a site called Leadership Strategy Insider. The article is called 11 Polarities That Great Leaders Manage Well. Spoiler alert, one of these is going to sound really familiar, okay? But nicely, for our purposes, it doesn't come until the end. So I highly recommend that you check out this article. It is not long at all. It's very short. It's a quick read. It'll take you a few minutes. In fact, I'm going to go through a lot of it right now just because it's short. So by mentioning the article, I go through a lot of it. But it's worth reading the descriptions that I won't necessarily get into. And if you go to primility.com/show/050050, you'll be able to check it out. But here are some of these, and this is from the article is written by Dr. John Scherer, and he is basically talking about something that Barry Johnson, the author of Polarity Management, identified, these 11 polarities that great leaders manage well. And he says if you're a leader at any level or just want to take the lead in your own life, the following will prove invaluable, okay? So here we go. So let's run down these 11 polarities that great leaders manage well. So we've got establishing close contact with subordinates and keeping a distance, being highly visible / leading the way, and receding into the background, showing confidence in subordinates and holding people accountable. I thought this one was really interesting. It's something that Brian Clark actually talks about a lot at Rainmaker Digital, this idea of trust but verify. You know, trust the people that are working for you, that are working with you, but also make sure that you verify that things are happening as they should be doing. Have that balance there. The fourth one is being open-minded and accepting of variation, and being normative, where you require certain standards. Fighting for your own unit, and going all out for company objectives. Tight scheduling of your time and being accessible for spontaneous moments. This is one that I personally really try and work on, which is, really trying to not waste time or making sure that all of the priorities get done, and yet you still want to be able to connect with people and not necessarily have every single moment planned out and organized. And it's an interesting balance to try to strike. Being direct in expressing your opinions and feelings and being diplomatic. Forgetting today, being a visionary, focusing on the possibilities, and forgetting tomorrow, right? Going for consensus and making decisions quickly. That's a very interesting one. Being dynamic and being prudent. And then, of course, this one right here, this is number 11, which we all will be quite familiar with. Being self-assured, right, which creates confidence in subordinates. And being humble avoids the pitfalls of arrogance. Being self-assured and being humble, pride, humility. Basically, number 11 is primility. And he's talking about this from a leadership sense within an organization. And again, as he says, you have to have that certain sense of pride, that self-assuredness, that confidence, because that's what creates confidence in people that you are leading, no matter what you're leading. Even if you're just leading yourself, right? If you don't have confidence in yourself, it's going to be very hard to even lead yourself in any direction. So to lead any organization, any group of people, that pride, that confidence is very important. And yet, as we've talked about on many of these previous examples of Primility Primer, that self-assuredness, that confidence, that pride can seep into arrogance and conceit if there isn't something on the other side, on the opposite end of the pole, right? Pulling it back toward the middle. And that's where that humility is so important, because it avoids the pitfalls of arrogance. So thinking that we have every answer, thinking that everything that we do is going to be right, we need that humility to balance that out. So these are the 11 polarities, and it's quite possible that one of the other 10, right? When we talk about number 11, that's when we talk about on the show all the time. But I understand that for some people, because you've told me when it comes to this idea of primility, it's much easier for you to grasp it in terms of balance, not necessarily just pride and humility. And that's why I wanted to talk about these, because that's what these all are about. They're about balance. They're about taking these important ideas, mindsets, actions, and balancing them out, so we never get too high, never get too low, never get too far on one side, never get too far on this side. And so I'd really be curious, if any of these other 10, besides number 11, if any of those other 10 really speak to you, if they, are really make an impact on you because they're more applicable to your personal situation. I'd love to know which ones they are. Feel free to comment at primility.com/show/050. Feel free to send me an email, jared@primility.com. I always really like to know, and really need to know, which of these examples really speaks to you. But again, I think all of us, in whatever we're doing, we are in leadership positions, even if the only person that we're leading is ourselves. And I think there's a lot of these polarities. There's a lot that we can take from these to become better leaders for ourselves, for our organizations, for our families, for whatever it is. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Primility Primer. I always appreciate it. If you are not on the email list yet, make sure you get on the email list, primility.com/join. Our Monday morning email will be coming out here in a few hours, at least a few hours from when I'm recording this. It may already have come out if you are listening to this later on Monday, but go to primility.com/join, get on that so that you can get our Friday digest and so you can get our Monday morning emails. And I will be right back here tomorrow morning, 6:30 Central Time live, and the podcast will be up about 7:15 with another brand new episode of Primility Primer. In the meantime, stay cognizant of your pride and humility. Wrist bump.